Quick, choose a meal deal with McValue. The $5 McChicken meal deal, the $5 McDouble meal deal, or the new $6 Daily Double meal deal. Each with its own small fries, drink, and 4-piece McNuggets. There's actually no rush. I'm just excited for McDonald's. For a limited time only, prices and participation may vary. Not valid for McDelivery.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt, a podcast about electric vehicles, renewable energy, autonomous driving, and much, much more. My name is Bodie, and I am your host. And on today's episode, it's a long one. We got a lot of information to cover in this particular episode. But first, we need to start off with a correction. So Dean, who listens to the show on YouTube, sent in a comment, and it was basically correcting my comment, which was during the GM earnings call episode. I mentioned that a GM Cruise vehicle hit a bicyclist and then drug the bicyclist like 20 feet. That was incorrect. The initial stories coming out did say that it was a bicyclist, but I got the rest of this wrong. And this really comes down to me being lazy, and then also, this is also part of being really lazy, is relying on my memory, which is faulty. So what had actually happened was, and thank you, Dean, for passing this along, is a woman was crossing in the crosswalk. She was hit by a human driver, and she landed in the path of an autonomous GM Cruise vehicle. The GM Cruise vehicle did not detect that there was a pedestrian there, and it drug her more than 20 feet to the side of the road. Now, that's not necessarily why GM got in trouble. GM got in trouble, and this part, I mean, I don't remember exactly what I said in there, but I'm pretty sure I remembered this part right, so whether I said it or not. But what GM got in trouble for was omitting certain parts of their verbal summary with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. They omitted the part where the GM Cruise vehicle drug the woman in their summary. So, and then they omitted it again in another report that they gave. So that's why they got in trouble, and they were fined $500,000 for that. So again, Dean, thank you very much for the correction. All right. One of my favorite things to do for this particular show is to shout out when people in the Kilowatt community are doing cool things. And many of you know James Hart, which I've mentioned, I don't know how many times, hundreds of times on this show. James is the host of True North EVs. He's the president of the Manitoba Electric Vehicle Association. He was the first Patreon supporter to this show. I consider him to be a friend, and apparently he's a Canadian media star. He's been making the rounds on Canada's news networks, talking about Canada's new EV rebates and infrastructure upgrades. So pretty cool. I was able to find 3 of James's interviews, and I added the links in the show notes if you want to check those out. And James's latest episode for True North EVs, and I'll put a link in the show notes as well, is Canada's, again, new EV rebate program, Everything You Need to Know. And I listened to this episode on Monday or Tuesday. I can't remember which day, but it was really good. I don't even live in Canada, I found it valuable. James always said, very kindly, he always says at the end of his show, he gives a plug for Kilowatt, which is super sweet of him to do. But he always says that I know way more about EVs than he does. This is a darn dirty lie. Replace darn with a really bad word. A darn, maybe not a really bad word, just a bad word, just your standard bad word. But anyway, during the beginning of the show, I relied heavily on folks like James when I was trying to figure out all this stuff about EVs. There was so much that I didn't know, and James was like my EV Sherpa, amongst other people's. If without them, I would be on, if there weren't folks like James around, I would literally be a body on Mount Everest, Everest, not Everest, but Everest. I would just be another body on there if it weren't for folks like James. So I'm gonna put James's information in the show notes. Please go check out what they're doing. If you live in the Manitoba area, consider dropping in on a Manitoba Electric Vehicle Association meeting. Like, I don't think if it's fully appreciated, if I can borrow something from Elon, but I don't think that's fully appreciated how much these associations like the Manitoba EV Association kind of shape policy. So, definitely get involved. And I know that James and the folks over there are really trying hard to make EVs, practical in Canada, but not only practical, but like create reasonable laws and just kind of educate politicians on what's going on. And I know people are doing that across not only the North American continent, but across the world. People are trying to get this done. And so to everybody doing that, big thank you. All right. Another big thank you goes out to Mark. Every month, Mark emails me like sales figures from Europe and the UK, which is very appreciated because I just go out and search through EV news 3 or 4 times a week and try to decide what are the most important stories of the week. So if somebody's sending them to you, makes it so much easier. So thanks, Mark. And there's other folks out there who do this as well. But in January 2026, the battery electric market in the UK fell about 6.4%, which is essentially just to say that it's flat. 6.4% is not significant. Tesla was hit the hardest, though. Registrations for Tesla vehicles fell 57% year over year to 647 vehicles. So not a lot of Teslas were sold in 2025 in January, and even less in 2026. BYD, however, was up 21% year over year, and they sold a total of 2,271 vehicles in that month of January, which is great. In other markets, Tesla had some nice bumps in terms of year over year increases, and a little bit, some devastating or declines. So let's just kind of go over this. And I'm only going to talk percentages just to kind of get through the information, because otherwise this whole show could literally be talking about sales trends around the world here. So we'll start off with Belgium. Belgium Tesla sales fell 30% in January. France, they fell 42%. In the Netherlands, they fell 67%. In Norway, they fell 88%. Tesla sold less than 100 cars in Norway in January. Sweden, though, increase of 26%. Spain, an increase of 70%. And Italy, an increase of 75%. Now, all of that sounds, depending on which side of the zero it's on, whether it's on the negative side or the positive side, all of that seems amazing. But these are relatively small markets. There was less than, oh, geez, I didn't write the number down. I think, no, don't quote me on this. I'm going from memory. And as we talked about before, my memory is faulty. But there was something like there was around 7,000 sales of Teslas in these markets, and these plus some other markets as well. So there's like 10 or 12 markets total that were listed. I only gave you the ones that had the most dramatic shifts. It was like 7,500 or something like that total in January of 2025. In January 2026, it was just over 4,000. So we're not like, 7,000 vehicles isn't nothing, but that's across multiple countries, multiple markets. It's not, even though it fell significantly for Tesla, what did I say, 57%? Even though it fell significantly for Tesla, it's not, this isn't going to ruin Tesla because they're down in certain countries, and then conversely, if all of these countries were up 100%, it wouldn't push Tesla's needle at all up or down. So while it's good, I think, to keep track of this stuff, all in all, the percentages seem bad, but the numbers aren't awful. But all of that in aggregate, as we collect all the different markets, that could spell danger. This could be a canary in the coal mine kind of a thing. All right, moving on. Ford is talking to the Trump administration about allowing Ford to partner with Chinese EV makers in the United States. This is according to Bloomberg. This would be like a similar situation that foreign automakers have to do in China. So in China, a foreign automaker goes in, they have to partner or form a joint venture with a Chinese company to manufacture their vehicles. Now, the one company that doesn't have to do this is Tesla. What Ford is proposing, it sounds like what Ford is proposing, I should say, is kind of the opposite, where Chinese automakers come to the U.S. and they form a joint venture with U.S. automakers to build their Chinese EVs for the U.S. market. By the way, GM does not support this plan, but I don't know, a year ago or so, when they were talking about Chinese EV makers coming here to the U.S., this is something that I thought would be a reasonable compromise. But we shall see whether it is or not. Obviously, not every automotive plant in the U.S. is union, but Ford is for sure. So it'd be interesting to see how what the union thinks about that. Let's see. Although if they form a joint venture, they could probably cut the union out if they really wanted to.
Quick, choose a meal deal with McValue. The $5 McChicken meal deal, the $5 McDouble meal deal, or the new $6 Daily Double meal deal. Each with its own small fries, drink, and 4-piece McNuggets. There's actually no rush. I'm just excited for McDonald's. For a limited time only, prices and participation may vary. Not valid for McDelivery.
The secret is out. With millions of younger-looking customers across the country, Plexiderm is one of the most highly sought-after products on the market. It visibly shrinks under-eye bags and smooths out crow's feet in minutes, and the effects last up to 10 hours. Influencers love it, magazines feature it, and people just can't get enough of it. As a matter of fact, Elle magazine gave it an Editor's Choice Award as Best Instant Wrinkle Filler for 2025. In as little as 10 minutes, Plexiderm reduces the appearance of fine lines, wrinkles, and those dreaded under-eye bags. So yes, you can look years younger in minutes, and the effects last for hours. No surgery, no gimmicks, just results. The best news, you can try Plexiderm for only $14.95. Plus, get free shipping. Don't wait. Order Plexiderm today. Visit plexiderm.com/special. That's plexiderm.com/special. Paid for by Sheer Science.
All right, 2 more stories. BYD and Geely are in the running to buy a Nissan. It's a combination Nissan Mercedes-Benz plant in Mexico, according to Reuters. And I might be getting the name wrong. It's Agua Calientes, Mexico. So hopefully, I'm definitely butchering how I'm saying it, but I think that's close. Anyway, this plant is capable of producing 230,000 vehicles a year. It would be a nice foothold in North America, if you know what I'm saying. BYD, or Chinese companies, not BYD specifically, but Chinese companies have already kind of got the green light to sell a limited number of EVs in Canada. That number goes up, to like 80,000, 79,000, but it's still not a lot over, a specific period of time. But I'm sure that BYD and other companies would like to build in a location that they can still service, because Mexico, obviously, they build cars. BYD and other car companies sell cars. Chinese car companies sell vehicles in China. Now that they can sell in Canada, and they can also sell in South America. I'm sure that Mexico is actually a pretty nice place, but also gets a nice foothold to pivot into the U.S. if they ever get to that point. Let's see. The other company that is looking at buying that plant is VinFast, which is a Vietnamese automaker, and then Great Wall Motors, which is Chinese, and Chery, which is also Chinese. They have. I don't think they'll end up probably winning the bid, but they're in the running as well. And then final EV story here. Polestar announced some updates to their lineup this morning. Here's the first update. Polestar 5 vehicles are on track for deliveries this summer. This is it's not a sports car. It's like a sports coupe. It's $100,000. I'm not going to spend too much time on a $100,000 car that's coming out this summer. When it comes out, we'll talk a little bit more about it. And then they're expecting the Polestar 7, which is an SUV, sometime in 2028. They're going to have a long roof Polestar 4, kind of like a Jeep Wagoneer kind of a thing, from what I'm imagining. That will come out in Q4 2026. So instead of the rounded back of the Polestar 4, it would be more boxy. And then the new Polestar 2 coming in 2027. So Bart Bouchat sent me a message, and he is very happy about this. So I'm sure leading up into when these new Polestars are released, we'll definitely get Bart on the show to talk about that. I found this interesting. Polestar has sold over 190,000 Polestar 2s. And that is definitely a popular car. I kind of would have thought more. I thought they would have sold more overall, when you consider, they sell these cars in a lot of different countries. So, yeah. Not that it's bad. I'm not bashing them or anything. I'm just saying, I thought it would be more. All right. So that is it for our EV news. Before we move on to our Tesla news, allow me to beg for your support. If you like the show and you want to support it, head on over to supportkilowatt.com. You can support the show on Patreon, of course. You can also support it on Supercast. All the money that comes in through those two services, they go to actually pay for the show. So and it goes to pay for things like traveling to CES, eating at CES. I did not have one meal, to the best of my knowledge, that was under $30, and most were over 30, closer to $40 when I was at CES. Taxi rides are also very expensive at CES. So, and Ubers are typically more expensive. So I don't begrudge, these places for trying to make more money, but goodness gracious, it is expensive to go there. So if you want to support the show, the trade-off is you give me a little bit of money, as little as $1, and then the ads get taken away. So if you're interested in that, supportkilowatt.com. Okay, let's get to our Tesla news. xAI's chatbot Grok has landed in European Teslas, and you can actually ask Grok to navigate for you, which is cool. The launch countries are Ireland, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Italy, France, Portugal, and Spain. Many of these countries are not English-speaking countries, and the Grok does speak the native language of its specific country. So it isn't just a repackaging of the North American version of Grok. They localized it, I guess would be a good way to say that. So if you have an older Tesla, it's unlikely to work. So what you're going to need is a premium connectivity subscription, and then you're also going to need a vehicle that comes with a AMD Ryzen processor. So if you have those things and you want to use Grok in your car, and you live in Europe, in those countries in Europe, you can do that now. Well, you can use it for navigation now. All right. Let's move on to our next story. Tesla is taking another swing at full self-driving in China. So Tesla had full self-driving for a short amount of time in China, and then Chinese officials said, no. Let's back this up a little bit. So in the meantime, since Tesla lost the ability to do full self-driving in China, what changes have they made? Tesla China is using AI for localized AI for the Chinese vehicles. So their FSD push is, they have a dedicated AI training center, which allows them to conduct training on, like I said, the Chinese vehicles in local facilities. So this it makes it a little bit easier because regulatory restrictions kept them from taking that data that was, from Chinese citizens and leaving China. So it kind of made it a little bit more complicated. This AI training center is up and running currently. At one point in time, and I think they still do, Tesla had a partnership with Baidu. I can't imagine that that partnership has gone away, and they might even be partnering with them on this AI center. I don't know. But, if you're like, well, Tesla already has partnerships. Yeah, they do with Baidu. But I don't, this is separate from that original partnership, which I think came out in like 2024. Anyway, this will also allow Tesla to train for local driving behaviors, different road layouts, and of course, different laws that happen to be in China. And then one of the other things that Tesla's doing is they are hiring autopilot test engineers, and they're going to be based out of Giga Shanghai. So that's cool. While there is no official timeline, Elon said that they're pushing for Q1 of 2026 to bring the FSD back to China. And when I say no official timeline, like head of Tesla China said, there's no official timeline. So, despite, I would think that they would know more than Elon on this one particular thing. I think Elon's trying to manifest something, and I think the head of Tesla China is trying to manage, their boss as well as the Chinese government.
Quick, choose a meal deal with McValue. The $5 McChicken meal deal, the $5 McDouble meal deal, or the new $6 Daily Double meal deal. Each with its own small fries, drink, and 4-piece McNuggets. There's actually no rush. I'm just excited for McDonald's. For a limited time only, prices and participation may vary. Not valid for McDelivery.
Need parts fast? O'Reilly Auto Parts has fast. Need them now? We've got now. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. We're O'Reilly Fast. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
All right, we have two more stories here. The first of the two, Tesla has begun production of the Cybercab. So, I think everybody's at this point aware of the Cybercab. It's a 2-seater vehicle with super cool doors. These early production units will likely be like test units, like mule units. Elon said that the Cybercab will not have a steering wheel or pedals. He said that many times, but, we shall see. It is noteworthy, though, that the vehicle that has rolled off the assembly line did not have a steering wheel or pedals. But that does not mean that Tesla didn't just build one version or a handful of versions of this car without steering wheels or pedals, and the ones that they're actually going to be selling later on won't have steering wheels or pedals. Just FYI. Full-throated production of this vehicle is expected to begin sometime in Q2. Elon thinks that this will happen as early as April. And by full-throated, I mean a slow ramp, because Elon says that he thinks that they can hit 5 million Cybercabs a year, which would be an amazing amount of demand. But my prediction is that deliveries for the Cybercab in 2026, 2027, and 2028 will be in the range somewhere between 1 and 5 million. So, yeah. Elon said that the Cybercab would sell to customers for $30,000 or less, In one outlet, it said that the car was going to be sold this year in 2026. Another outlet said in 2027. So 2026, 2027, sometime around that time period. Now, I'm doubtful. 5 million is a lot of vehicles of one particular vehicle. Just as a kind of quick reference point, the Toyota RAV4 is the number one best-selling car worldwide, right? Passenger vehicle worldwide. And the best number I could find was from NovoFlow wiper blades on LinkedIn. So I don't even know if this number is 100% correct, but a heck of a hard time trying to find an actual number for this. But we're looking at about 1.28 million vehicles sold in 2025. So to sell 5 times that many is pretty difficult, especially when this vehicle largely relies on you to or relies on Tesla to have an actual, the market set up where they can actually use it, right? The benefit of the Robotaxis is supposed to go out there and earn you money. It's only 2-seaters. That not to say that a 2-seat vehicle is useless, because that's not the case at all. But yeah, I think it'd be 5 million is a lot. It'd be hard to overcome that for sure. Not hard if they got the Robotaxi service approved everywhere. That probably wouldn't be hard at all. But it's a definite uphill battle for that. Now let's talk about the Robotaxi service. Elon has made some big promises in the past, and most recent in 2025. He promised that there would be 500 cars operating. This was last summer. He promised that there would be 500 cars operating in Austin by the end of 2025, unsupervised ride coverage for half the U.S. population by the end of 2025, unsupervised ride coverage for half the U.S. population by the end of 2025, and expansion to 8 to 10 cities, expanding the Robotaxi service to 8 to 10 cities by the end of 2025. So how close are we to this? Well, currently Tesla is only in 2 markets, Austin and the Bay Area. They do, though, plan to expand to Dallas, Houston, Miami, Orlando, Tampa, Las Vegas, and Phoenix. But they haven't expanded there yet. If you add in Austin and the Bay Area, that's like 9 cities. So, maybe we'll get 8 to 9 by the end of 2026. According to Electrek, who they used data from Robotaxi Tracker, which is actually a really neat site. Tesla is currently only operating 42 Robotaxis in Austin. And it looks like Robotaxi Tracker is measuring this. They have people who have signed up for the service, and then they report back when they are able to use one of the Robotaxis. And there's certain things that they have to do to prove that they're actually getting a ride in a Robotaxi. They also cover Waymo and Zoox as well. But there are certain things that you have to do to prove that that's the vehicle that you're taking, whether, before they count it or not. So 42 Robotaxis. I'm going to talk about Robotaxi Tracker in another episode. I think what they're doing is interesting. However, they don't have a ton of people, so it's kind of hard to get a real accurate idea of how Tesla, Waymo, and Zoox are doing. However, if there's only 42 cars in Austin, and goodness knows how many in San Francisco or in the Bay Area, it's not a lot. It's not like you need a ton of people to track, if that number's correct. And I don't know if it's correct or not, but I will talk a little bit more about it. One of the cool things that Robotaxi Tracker does is they have a leaderboard. So number 1 in the leaderboard is someone with the ID of BOT, B-O-T. They've taken 132 trips since the beginning of February 2026. Apparently they live in the Bay Area. So that's the number 1 person. Number 25 has taken 8 trips, and they joined in January of 2026. And they're in Austin. So, not a lot of rides. And it may be, because there's not a lot of rides to be had. 132 trips in just a short amount of time in the Bay Area seems like a lot. I mean, I don't want to drive in the Bay Area. I've driven in the Bay Area and it's frustrating. So it does, or it can be frustrating. So it doesn't make sense. It does, make sense as someone who's living in the Bay Area is taking so many trips. And plus there's a novelty to it. Let's see. According to Robotaxi tracker, Robotaxi showed that only 19% of Tesla's fleet in Austin is currently operating. And this could be because demand is low, so they only need 19% of the cars. This could be a maintenance issue, although, how much maintenance do you really need to do on an electric car? Not much. Another issue is there is a rain. There's been a lot of rain in Austin lately. Austin typically averages 80 days of rain a year. However, it's been fairly rainy, and we're only a month and a half into 2026. And, Tesla shuts down the Robotaxi service when it rains over, overabundance of caution. So, yeah, I think the thing that bothers me bothers me a lot is Elon's grand announcements, right? He makes these huge announcements that are really hard to believe. And yes, he eventually delivers on them, but I don't think at this point in time, I think EVs are mature enough. And I think full self-driving is mature enough to this point to make more realistic announcements and set more realistic expectations. That is not to say that, you shouldn't, tease what's to come, because I don't think that's a bad thing. But saying that you're going to cover half the population of the US by the end of 2025 when you're already more than 6 months into 2025, which he did say, that's insanity. I mean, 8 to 10 cities, half the population of the US. 8 to 10 cities seems reasonable if you have a small fleet, but half the population of the US in such a short period of time, I don't know. I know that, Elon did make a mention right before President Trump took office that, he had said something to the effect that, the regulatory environment, is a challenge for them. But, soon they think that they can kind of at a federal level get some of those restrictions eased. And, turns out they can't. So I don't know if he had said these things because in his mind that this was just going to be a slam dunk because he donated a bunch of money to the Trump administration and they would just do this favor for him. I genuinely don't know. But even so, even if that did happen, why not set a realistic expectation? I get it. When you're early on in, 2012, 2016, even 2020, there was so much unknowns and so much stuff that still had to be figured out. We're still in the infancy. We're just crossing over into the toddler years of autonomous driving. Well, I'd say we're just crossing over the toddler years in EVs. We're still in the infancy of full self-driving, but we have enough data now to kind of understand, especially a company like Tesla, to understand what this is going to take and what the timeline will look like. It's not like Tesla hasn't worked with local governments and state governments before to get this stuff approved. It's not like, they haven't. I just read an article that Tesla passed 1 billion miles in full self-driving, 8 billion miles, in full self-driving. That's great. But, at that level, you should have a more measured tone at what you're promising. So, any hooser, I didn't mean to get lectury at the end of that there. So, in summary, congratulations to James for being a media darling in Canada. Go check out what he's doing. Like I said, I'll put links in the show notes. Thank you, Dean, for the correction, and thank you very much to Mark for sending on those numbers. And I do want to say, when I say thank you for the correction, I think a lot of people see being corrected as a something to kind of, I don't know if be ashamed of, but something to maybe be defensive about. Like that is not how I handle those kind of things. Like I am more than willing to say that I think I do a pretty good job when it comes to giving you the straight facts, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to get things wrong, and that doesn't mean I'm not going to misremember. So if you have a correction, send it on. I mean, if you have an opinion about something I said and you disagree, that's different. That's not exactly a correction. We just see things differently. Send those along too. Like, I'm not saying don't, but if you're like, no, this part isn't right, what you said, right on. I will be more than happy to, if you're correct, I'll be more than happy to let you know that you're correct. So yeah. So thank you to Mark, Dean, and congratulations to James. And I think I've rambled enough. So I hope y'all have a wonderful rest of your week. Oh, on Friday, Donut Labs has their big unveil of their battery and what it all means. So we'll definitely be sure to cover that on Friday. But I really hope, I want Donut Labs to have, I want everything they say to be true. We'll see. Miss Go Electric, and I'll have to remember to put the article, or not the article, the YouTube video in the show notes. But if I don't, Miss Go Electric did a really good breakdown of Donut Labs and what potentially they have. And she might be right. So definitely go check out and see what she's doing. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. I will talk to you soon.
What if this year your work felt more meaningful? At Brightview Senior Living, every role matters because every day our associates help create moments of comfort, connection, and joy for residents and their families. You'll find supportive teams, opportunities to grow, and work you can feel proud of when you head home. If you're ready for a career with purpose, this could be your year. Start something that matters at Brightview Senior Living. Explore open roles at brightviewseniorliving.com.